So, oh, here we go. Okay, now Richie. Let's give people a couple minutes to come into the room, and then we'll get started here. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, just give them 10 or 15 seconds, and and so before we actually kick off here, let people wander in a little bit. So, okay, I mean we're 30 seconds in. Why don't we get started? So, but we're back here with our LinkedIn Live event. I'm so fortunate today to have Richie Bavasso with NumaWave join me. Richie and I are birds from the same feather, or however that saying goes. We've been beating, we've been doing startups for 40 plus years, 80 plus years combined between the two of us, Richie. And today we're going to talk about why digital MedTech or digital health fails and how to avoid it. Richie, you're an absolute pioneer in the digital health space. You started back in the days when it wasn't even called digital health.
That is true.
I think you told me, I think you started your first digital health company in 1992. You want to give us a little bit of that backstory? How you got and then on top, what's changed or what hasn't changed since then?
Yeah, interesting. Well, first of all, to be an old guy in this digital AI world, it's kind of an oxymoron because the newer generations think that we don't even know what a computer is. Well, AI has been around for 50 years. We just only recently have had the computing power to optimize what we know as AI today. To kind of give you a sense of what was digital health back in the day. I used to be able to convince pharmaceutical companies to spend $2-3 million on a CD-ROM. CD-ROM was big digital technology back then, and we were doing simulations and avatars even back then, 30, 40 years ago. And it was always in the pursuit of innovation, and I think that's what drives our market is innovation, the next new thing. And I think you could read anywhere in the press that talks about AI being probably one of those trends in innovation that's going to have some staying power. I think everything that we do will be influenced by AI in one sense or another, and we've only just scratched the iceberg, a tip of the iceberg. So in terms of 1992. So let me go back and tell our very brief story. Most of the people on this call will know what a pharmaceutical sales rep does. Some of them might even have been pharmaceutical medical device salespeople. In the past, you'd walk into a doctor's office, you'd have a briefcase full of paper, and you'd pull out a PI, you'd pull out a fancy brochure, and you'd try to convince the doctor that your product was worth prescribing. And then as time went on, there was 8mm film because they were adding animation to some of this, mechanism of action and how the physiology worked. And then further time went on in terms of the CD-ROM, et cetera, et cetera. So over time, there's been this accumulation of assets to communicate to various healthcare providers. Back in 92, there was similarly, there was drug reps carrying briefcases. There was also what was called the tablet PC came out, which is the precursor to the iPad, right? Yep. And everyone was getting all excited because now they had a medium to share with the doctor all of this digital assets that they had created. And they'd done something also very similar, and I call it Amazon-ish. They had these vast databases of customer profiles. So they knew that Dr. Morrison, usually played golf on Tuesday, was a high prescriber of this antibiotic, and liked to receive his information in the form of a video. Yep. So it would behoove the drug company to actually deliver to Dr. Morrison information in the form of a video, not on Tuesday. Okay. Right, and it got even more and more refined. So this concept of closed loop marketing was established. Yep. And it was essentially attaching the customer repository, or the Salesforce.com, if you will, to the content, and then learning. So every interaction was driving the next interaction in terms of which digital asset to pull. So that's where it all began for me, anyway.
Wow. And this was back in 1992, and you were delivering. You had a tool on the laptop, on the tablet that reps would then start carrying around with them?
Yeah, we had already invested in a content management system to give permission to the doctors who used to lecture at conferences.
Yep.
So, they were very tightly controlled as to what the doctor could say or not say about the drug, based on FDA clearance, FDA IFU. So we built this content management system that allowed the doctor to use, let's say, on a 30-slide deck, 10 slides they couldn't edit, they couldn't move. Another 10 slides they couldn't edit, but they could change the order. And the last 10 slides they could do anything they wanted with. And that allowed the kind of the freedom for the doctor to present with somewhat flexibility, but still maintain the legal regulatory requirements of the drug company. And so we just converted that to sales reps.
And so let's kind of transpose like back 1992 and today. From a sales and market development standpoint, have things greatly changed, or? Yes.
The biggest thing that's changed is it used to be a lot more discretionable money being spent on things that were innovative just for the sake of innovation. The market has tightened up considerably now, both from the customer perspective and I would say from an investor perspective. Now they want to see ROI. Yeah, and that's the big, and that pretty much speaks to the title of this talk, this podcast. If you cannot explain the value of your proposition, the innovation won't see the light of day.
And when you say value, so I always think of this as two components, two major components to the value of a medical tech or MedTech or digital health. One is the clinical. You have to have the clinical. But that kind of, in this day, back in that day, that's what you led with. That's what you closed with too, right?
Yeah, right.
What's changed in today's world, and you and I have both seen this, is that just gets you in the game today.
Yeah.
That doesn't get you to a close ever. And now you have to have what you're starting to talk about, the economic and the ROI. Right? And I even like to call it soft ROI versus hard ROI.
Yep.
So when you say what do you think?
Okay, so if nothing else from this LinkedIn cast today has any value to anybody, I'm speaking now to the young entrepreneur who's full of passion and has a great idea. Yeah. I can tell you exactly the journey they're going to take. They're going to first validate clinically, as you've already described. Then they're going to chase the regulatory clearance if it's apropos. And then they're going to figure out, okay, how do I develop and package this product to sell it? And then the last thing they're going to do is figure out who's going to pay and how much. Yeah. And I guess what I'm advocating is do it in reverse. Yes. Figure out who's going to pay and how much and for what. Then, build your platform and then, test it. Yep. Again, not selling it, but I'm telling you, testing it that people will actually use it, and then figure out how to clinically validate it and finally get regulatory approval if it's important. Now that's a tough pill to swallow because it's an antithesis to how we normally think, as you've already pointed out.
I love that, Richie, because you and I have been through this, and we see this all the time. It's tough pill to swallow, but that's the reality of the world today. It's completely flipped that way. And if you do it the old way, so let me ask you this question. How many people do you think actually do it the way you just described, where you flip it, whereas instead of the original way you talked about, where you build the product, chase, get some clinical data, chase, get your regulatory approval, then package it up to start selling, and then figure out what.
Okay, you're probably not expecting this answer. I do not know of anyone, and probably because if they've done it this way, they've done phase 1 and phase 2 of saying who's going to pay and how much, and they've said, you know what, this is not worth building. And I don't know anyone who's done that. They keep trying to find, someone will buy this, or someone will pay for it, and if they're doing it correctly, many companies will never get off the ground because they shouldn't. They shouldn't get off the ground. I kind of have a hypothesis, and you're right. I agree with you 1,000%. A lot of these products we see out there, they actually started with the economic value proposition, completely understanding that and developing the ROI. That not just they think is the economic value, but customers actually going to respond to and buy into. Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of companies would never. They wouldn't even start building the product, right? Bigger companies, let's say 3M, Philips, big companies, They'll do this all internally, and then they'll decide whether or not to go forward with the product line. And many times they don't, but they do it all internally because they have the capital to do it.
You know, they fill out the product and they do all the clinical.
Yeah, they're intrapreneurially. They'll do it, and they have lots of capital. And you know, a small company like mine doesn't have the capital to do a lot of experiments. There's an MIT study that was published that's worth noting. It's very, very interesting. It's apropos to what we're talking about. They took two groups, and their mission was to build the same product. They told group number one, you can build and release one product. It has to be, you know, so go out there, take as much time as you need, as much capital as you need, and build the one best product. They told the other group, your goal is to build as many versions of the product as possible in the same period of time. So we want to see hundreds of versions. Guess which one of the two built the better product?
The hundreds of versions one.
Exactly. So it's all about iteration, MVP, small amounts of capital being expended, test. And that again, you don't really learn that in business school.
I know, but we don't hear the term MVP in the life science healthcare world. I mean, if you go into the IT world, everyone's operating from that paradigm now. We don't, you know, in the healthcare, we say, well, you got the regulatory process you got to go through, and you got, you know, and the build process takes so long. You got to get it right out of the gate. We can't do an MVP. Right. What's your argument to that, Richard?
Yeah. I guess maybe we should. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's a well-known term in technology. Maybe it's the MPP. You know, the minimum purchasable product. You know, what will somebody pay you a nickel for? And then maybe down the road they'll pay you $1 and maybe $10 and maybe $1,000. I mean, and you know, a lot of what we're talking about here as old guys is, you know, theory. You know, a lot of what we have, I try to live every day, but I'm still practicing and learning every single day as I have for the past 40 years. And what we're prescribing here today doesn't work for everybody 100% of the time. You know, it's a collection of experience learned through scars and bruises that we're hoping we can help, you know, another colleague.
But I actually agree with you, Richie. I think we need to be pushing this MVP idea or MPP. I like your term, minimal purchasable product. I think we need to be pressing this in healthcare and life sciences and MedTech because we don't do enough. And it is, if you don't, I mean, at the end of the day, if you build a product no one's going to pay for, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. And so you know, that's a slippery slope too. And I'll give you another anecdote. Yep. So I had a colleague of mine who owned a company, tried to do it the way we just been talking about, went out, found a champion within the healthcare system, spent a lot of time testing, iterating, ended up coming up with a tool that everyone on the committee, meaning the customer committee, said, this is what we need to reduce readmission. I got it to the CEO and the CEO goes, no, I don't want to stop readmissions. I make money on readmissions. Kill the whole project. Right. So, you know, what do you say to a startup company that did almost everything perfect?
Yes.
Except at the very end, you know, they missed what the real problem was.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of gets down to the crux of it, right? So, and it gets back to where we started the conversation from, Richie, right? Mm-hmm. My hypothesis is they're probably looking at this from a clinical perspective, but they weren't looking at it from the economic ROI perspective. And who was going to make that economic decision, which in this case was the CEO, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you better be talking to that person because it's so heavily weighted to making sure we have a economic ROI that the buyer's going to buy off against. You better be talking to those people right out of the gate. You had a case study that a company that you actually very successfully did this with as a client of yours. I know you're now focused on NumoWave, but you have done consulting over your career. You had a case study of a company that brought the technology to you where you actually got to practice this minimal viable product in a very creative way. Can you share that story? I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know we talked about this, but give me a hint. I've been involved in 6 different companies.
It was a neurodegenerative disease company, and
yes. Right. Yeah. You know, in that particular instance, it was a very, very simple technology. And I think that's another key takeaway. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
It didn't require the purchase of any hardware. It was a piece of software that all you had to do was use your phone and your laptop, either or. Which,
Yep.
can you imagine me denying you use of your phone or your laptop? So if you just used it, and we tried very, very hard to fight all the enhancement that the customers wanted. So customers wanted to add all these things. What about a patient diary? And we kept fighting over and over and over again with the customer saying, no, 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 it's got to be simple. And that's how we won adoption, by not listening to the customer.
Yes.
So, the customer doesn't always know. Market research is important, but if you go out and ask a doctor what they need, they probably don't know what they need, particularly if it's in technology. And just to give a little humble to my position in terms of my experience, I was the guy that predicted that no one would ever buy the iPad.
Really?
Okay. Why? Because we did all kinds of market research back in the tablet PC days.
Oh, yes. From your
which the sales rep said, I got to have a keyboard. I have to have a keyboard. So we went down the road of the convertible tablet PC that had the keyboard attached. Yep. So when the iPad came out, I said, oh, no one's ever going to use this. There's no keyboard. Well, it just goes to show you what I knew, which was nothing, because the iPad has taken over the world in terms of the tablet. So I think the lesson that I want to share is, keep it simple at all costs, all costs. And then it's easily to consume, and you can price it accordingly.
So say that last thing. I missed that last thing you said.
I said it's easy to consume when it's simple, and you can price it accordingly. So the price, the margin you need to attain isn't as high as if it were a very complex medical device.
Got it. Again, minimal viable product or minimal purchasable product, and that there's a simplicity associated with that. I think that one of the things with the simplicity, and this can be challenging in the MedTech space, but you can even do it with even very technical products, keeping it simple. Solve very simple problems, right? Or relatively focused problems in a way that requires the least amount of steps to change. I think the simplicity comes into something that you and I have also talked about. Behavioral change is a big barrier to adoption of any new technology.
Yeah. Our whole world has been healthcare, you and I.
What?
And it's a very complex world we live in, because there are multiple stakeholders, and they all influence each other: the patient, the payer, the provider, the health system, the regulatory body. And I've never been able to successfully build something that makes them all happy. Yeah. That's why you have to go back to who's ultimately going to pay. The patient's probably not going to take money out of their pocket. The doctor's probably not going to take money out of their pocket. The payer, another anecdote I'll share. We were presenting one of our projects to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. And the guy loved what we were doing. But when he finally said to me, he says, you know what? Even if you give this to me for free forever, it's going to cost me $1 million a year to implement it. And that was a shocker to me. I never thought about that. Right. I thought that the price discussion stopped at what I was charging, but there's so many more tangential costs to whatever you're trying to do.
And that's the other reason to keep it simple, right? Because it's more simple it is, and the more easier you make it for your customers to use and and adopt, and getting anybody in healthcare to change their existing behaviors. I mean, that's darn near impossible. I think you and I also talked about this. Look, there's only one thing harder than getting them to change their behavior, right? And that's changing their beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe when all doctors are AI, and then I'm sure after that all patients will be AI. Maybe then you just put a program in there and change your behavior. I don't know. God only knows what the future has.
I don't know. I think, going back to the digital health world, which is a lot of the AI is going to impact that. But, we saw this, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So, Internet 101 back in, early 2000s when we had the internet boom and bubble and crash. We saw the same thing in digital health about 10 or 15 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And we, everybody was investing in digital health. We had all these, and most of those products have never met the promise. We're now starting to see some of it finally, which was same thing with the internet. The second version of the internet, people figured out what the value model was. here's a question I have in healthcare, AI. What do you think about the hype around AI in healthcare? Do you think we're going to see the same bubble?
Yeah, I think so. I think you described it pretty aptly. I mean, digital health had to go through a cleansing. So I'm making up a number. 400,000 digital health apps in 1999, and now we're down to maybe 50,000 that have some sort of viability, and 500 that are probably making money, not profitable but making money. The same thing's going to happen in AI. It's a commodity. I mean, really. I know ChatGPT doesn't want to hear that. Sam Altman doesn't want to hear that. But it's a commodity, and the smaller companies will always drive the innovation that the bigger companies will acquire, and that's how it'll grow. So we are so early days, but I think the ramp is going to be far faster than measured in decades. It's going to be minimal couple of years.
It feels different to me as well. I think I think you hit the nail on the head. The people that do it, can the people that are doing it right out of the gate get it right? And what can they do to do that?
Boy, that's a tough question. If I look at where a lot of the dollars are being spent in healthcare that are AI driven, it's in improving operational efficiencies. It's not in diagnosis. It's not in tracking disease progression or delivering therapy. It's in, how can I make the ER more efficient? How can I make scheduling more efficient? How can I get more time back to the doctor? Those are big problems.
Yeah, they are big problems.
An AI efficiency tool can help. So I don't have an answer to your question, but I'm just seeing that trend now.
Yeah, I see the same trend. Going back, you had mentioned to me earlier that you had a case study of AI neurodegenerative disease digital health tool where, if I get this right, because I'd love to hear this story again, where they were building out the product and you actually said you stopped them in their tracks and said, stop building the product. We can actually deliver the value of this without the product to test the use and the value proposition around it. You have them kind of test out a manual solution to the same problem instead of a digital solution to the problem. Do you remember that story?
I vaguely remember, but I don't think it was in neurodegenerative diseases. You can do AI and you can do a lot of things with paper and pencil. It's just not efficient and it takes a long time. So to the degree that you can test out, with humans, maybe as opposed to pure AI, the workflows and the processes, I would highly recommend you do that at a small scale. How many of us have gone to the chat bot and after 5 seconds said, I'm out of here. This is not working for me. Well, that could have easily been fixed with a human-to-human dialogue to test, the same experience. And I'm not Sam Altman. I'm not in that world of building conversational AI. So I don't know what they're doing on that side.
Yeah, I'm just, if I remember, or the thought I had around when I was talking about this is that a lot of people build out, if you can kind of build out the garage product, build the product in your garage instead of building out the whole product, right? That iterative things, get it in front of doctors, get it in front of patients, start using it and see, and actually if you can actually get real clinical outcomes, that gives you data that you can then measure whether you can build a successful value proposition around it.
I think if I can take a parallel shift in terms of when to raise funds, and it's apropos to exactly what you're talking about. Too many companies that I help counsel think they need to raise funds to start their company, to build their product, and do all the things before they actually sell it. And so they end up raising millions of dollars and they burn through it all. And then they're at this daily living on the edge of a cliff at the most critical time in the life of their company. And to your point, don't raise any money if you can until you're ready to launch and scale. And first of all, when you have a conversation with an investor, that's when they want to invest. They don't want to pay you to build your product or pay you to test it. They want to give you capital so that you can take 10 sales and turn them into 10,000 sales. So, and that's difficult. It's very difficult Easier said than done. Not everybody has the heart of an entrepreneur.
And that is very difficult to do in this day and time, because with a medical device, there is a fair amount of investment in actually building it, even or a digital health tool. But I think it gets back to the earlier conversation we're ahead, is that in this day and age, the clinical isn't enough. You've got to have the whole economic value proposition. And how do you get that? It's really hard to get that until you actually have your technology in some way in front of patients and in front of doctors actually being used in a way that can show that value or not.
Yeah, I think the litmus test is, if you have an idea and you have a concept on paper or in PowerPoint, you go to a doctor and say, or whoever your target customers, it may not be doctor, maybe somebody else. What do you think, and how much would you pay for this? Not just what you think, because you'll always get free. How much would you pay for this? And they're going to tell you, and then charge double it, because you think you probably be able to get more than they actually tell you. But the point is, if they say I wouldn't pay anything for it, close down the shop or reconfigure it.
Yeah, it's funny. I do a lot of customer discovery, and you'd be surprised at how many people don't ask that question. Or the other question that kind of fits in there is, how are you solving this problem today?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then digging in deep into how they're solving the problem today and what they're spending on solving it, because inevitably they're doing something to address the problem, even if it's nothing. There's usually costs associated with that.
The classic case study I spent a lot of time on studying medication adherence. Why my patients don't take their drugs. And the rule of thumb is they only take it 50% of the time. Even if you told them you're going to diet this week if you don't take it, there's a 50-50 chance they won't take it. Yeah. So there's been many, many, many technological solutions. I actually, in my career, built a robot to actually help solve this problem. It was an NIH $5 million funded SBIR to build a robot.
Yeah.
And you know what? When we got right down to it and we began to ask patients why you don't take your drugs, I can't afford it. The pill makes me sick. I have too many, so I parcel them out. If I'm supposed to take 12 a day, I take 6 one day and 6 the next day. None of those are technological problems.
Right.
So consequently, the robot is a really nice looking robot collecting dust.
Yeah. Because it doesn't address the core problem.
Doesn't address the core problem,
and that's always a big issue. So, Richie, we're going to be wrapping up here in a minute. Let me ask you a couple quick questions. So, is there one question when you first talk to a founder about what they're doing? Is there one question you lead off with, or?
Yes, there is, and it always confounds them. 100% of the time, it sends them for a loop. And I've already asked it. Who's your customer and how much they're going to pay? And they don't know.
Yeah.
They might know generally, neurologist or urologist. Okay, but specifically, which neurologist? Neurologists in big practices? Neurologists serving critical access hospitals in rural areas? And they just don't know the answer. And then how much they're going to pay? I'll figure that out later. Whatever the insurance company reimburses me, then they have no idea what they're talking about.
Great, good. I agree, and then that kind of gets back to where we started from. Clinical value proposition only gets you in the game. Yep. The economic ROI is what's going to sell. What's one myth of MedTech or digital health that you'd like to kill off?
Yeah, no one cares about your technology.
That's brilliant.
No one cares. If you give me a presentation in the first 10 slides about your technology, I'm done. I don't care about your technology.
This question: how many founders of companies have, when you first started talking to them, told you about the problems they solve versus the technology they have?
1%, 2%.
Yeah.
Yep. They'll talk about the problem that they're targeting.
Yes.
Not the problem they're solving. And again, it's all about my technology, what my technology can do. And I'm telling you guys, everybody, gals and girls, people, no one cares about your technology. What they care about is, what can it do for me?
Yes.
And, save time, save money. And that's an important point too. We only have a couple seconds left. When you're looking at healthcare, there are 3 priorities. Number 1, can you help me drive revenue? Number 2, can you save me time?
Yep.
Number 3, can you save me money? Oh, yeah, but this is probably at number 4. Can you improve patient care? But really, can you help me make money?
Yep.
If you can answer that question,
If
everybody's listening.
If
Everybody's
you can generate
listening.
additional income,
Yes.
that's a tough one for most companies, though.
Yeah. Hospitals are starving. Doctors are starving. Show me how I can make money with the tool. And also tell me what I don't have to do anymore. What's the one thing I don't have to do anymore because I'm doing it with you now?
Right.
Another tough question.
That's the time-saving piece, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because there's clinicians or anybody in the healthcare space, they don't need anything added to their day.
No. Nope.
One last question, Richie, before we wrap up. So finish this sentence. If you build it.
If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear the sound, doesn't make a sound. Yeah. No, if you build it, they won't necessarily come. They might. Hey, there's exceptions to every rule.
But in my experience, you've got to get that's called luck.
Yep.
Your future dependent upon luck.
Absolutely.
Richie, this has been so much fun. We've been all over the place today, but
that's our normal conversation, Chris. We always go all over the place.
We kind of always do, but this is last thing before we wrap up. Can you just in a really brief? Can you tell us what you're doing with NeumoWave? Because that's so
NeumoWave has the unique distinction of being a medical device that actually saves a life. We're not counting steps. We're not telling you what your heart rate is. We're not giving you these important parameters on your health, but we save a life. So we have been able to, through 8 clinical trials, determine the precursor to an onset of a drug overdose. So several minutes before the actual overdose, through our monitoring tool, we can send an alert. 70% of people who die from a drug overdose, there's someone in the next room who just didn't know. So Narcan is a wonderful anecdote for drug overdose. But if nobody's there to administer it, you can't self-administer it.
Yeah.
And so we're tying the millions and millions and millions of units of Narcan have been distributed in this country to a force that will basically let people know now's the time you need to use it. And that's what we're hoping is kind of a major impact on the United States and the world.
So Narcan can save lives if they know when and where to save lives.
Exactly. Yeah.
So your tool is the enabling tool for actually the saving lives with Narcan.
Yeah, and there's many other pieces to it, but that's the basic sentiment.
That's great. Richie, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a blast, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again.
All right, Chris, thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.